on this episode of Postcards.
We need to preserve our culture so our children in the future, maybe generations, and they would know who we are.
The younger generation kind of have like an identity crisis, trying to figure out where you are and where you stand in the American culture.
What it means to be Hmong is free to travel and free to journey through life.
This program on Pioneer Public Television is funded by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund with money from the vote of the people of Minnesota on November 4th, 2008. Additional support provided by Mark and Margaret Yakel-Julien in honor of Shalom Hill Farm, a nonprofit rural education retreat center in a beautiful prairie setting near Windham in southwestern Minnesota. ShalomHillFarm.org. The Arrowwood Resort and Conference Center, your ideal choice for Minnesota resorts, offering luxury townhomes, 18 holes of golf, Darling Reflections Spa, Big Splash Water Park, and much more. Alexandria, Minnesota. Explore hundreds of lakes, trails, and attractions for a great vacation or a place to hold an event. ExploreAlex.com. Tri-State Brain and Spine Institute, with locations in Alexandria, Edina, Crookston, and Maple Grove. Doctors dedicated to evaluating and treating all types of brain and spine problems, no matter how complex.
Portland Grove is it's kind of a town that it's so good for us. Actually, mostly it's a farmland, and it's a kind of familiar like what we live in Laos, and it's a quiet place and good neighbors and good community, and everyone's knowing each other. That's why we've grown the Southwest area and over 140 families.
I don't know much about the war too. I was way too young back then, but just from understanding and things like that, it's just that the Hmong assisted the U.S. during the Vietnam War, and then after the war, the Hmong were being persecuted by the Vietnamese there, and we have to find refuge.
In 1975, the communists took over the country, so we have to move up to the jungle, actually the high mountain. And for a couple of years, and we can really survive. There's no food, no medicine, and no weapon and not ammunition. So we thought that we couldn't even win the war, or just hanging around like that. That's why we decided to escape and take a long journey from our place to the Mekong River and cross to Thailand. It took us over 30 days.
So there were refugee camps in Thai that would take the Hmong. So our parents, they tried to get to the camp, and from the camp, and then at that time, I believe the U.S. Had programs that would take the Hmong in to the U.S. too, and that's how we ended up in the U.S.
I'm the first family moving to Southwest Minnesota. I only moved to Minnesota for 3 months, and then I find a job. My sponsor found a job for me, that's what I remember. And the time for being in school, adult school. That's very, very difficult for me to learn different language and to learn different culture.
I know that we're losing the culture so much in this country that our kids are adapting to the American style of life. The elders, they are having a tough time adjusting to the new life. They try to, but at the same time they're losing their kids, they're losing their culture, they're losing their language. I think it's a tough time for them.
The younger generation who, like me, were born overseas and they come over to the States and they kind of have like an identity crisis of, not knowing exactly, do they want to be more modern, but then at home their family tells them, you need to remember where you came from, So you do have an interesting array of trying to figure out where you are and where you stand in the American, culture.
nó chỉ là tu ni cha tu mẹ cho tu chết ni cha tu cho
I want to preserve as much as the instrument and the music and the arts as much as I can, but primarily I want to preserve the language. A lot of our kids are losing that language, and they're speaking Monglish nowadays, and it's 10% Hmong and 90% English. My father was an expert in the bamboo instrument, which is known as qing, and he learned that from my grandfather and also learned that from my great-grandfather, so it's been passed on so many generations, and I lost it all. I didn't play it at all. I played for, he taught me about three weeks to a month of lessons, and he started seeing that my grades were a little down, so he didn't want to pursue that, so he let me go, and that was that.
Well, I'm getting old. I wish I 40 years back,
We have a lot of social gatherings, specifically the Hmong New Year, which happens annually. It's a time after a harvest is being done, and so we come together and celebrate, and young folks would get to know each other, courtship. The most important thing of all is getting the community to come together. It's only once a year, so the community, they're coming together and having a great time together.
Ever since we start having the Hmong New Year down here about 10, 12 years ago, I've been to all of them. It's a great time of the year for all of us to just kind of get together. And even though we live in a small town, there are friends that you don't really get to see them. Everyone is busy doing their own things. And it's a great opportunity to kind of catch up with some friends and meet some new faces and get to know each other.
The event is open to the public, the general public, so anybody is welcome, and we encourage that in order to preserve our culture and our heritage, we encourage that everybody to wear traditional clothes. And if you're white, we encourage that you wear your heritage clothing to the event, so it shows that your culture is still there.
The things that we have in Hmong New Year is just performing dances and singing, instruments. We have like food gathering, sharing, and then we have ball tossing. That's one of the big things for the younger folks because they're looking for like find their couple. It's for courtship. So
the dating thing, back in the old country, you have gals that were from one little village and then another person and another guy in another village. So they'd come during the New Year and meet there. So tossing the ball back and forth was kind of the way to talk to each other and kind of court and get to know each other. And then from there, that New Year is where they lead on and, get to know each other better, date. Dating is not really done in our culture, but, that was kind of how they did it back then.
Ít khó dùng được mong giờ họ kiến nó kế hồ mong mà nhưng muốn đâu chán đâu giả vẫn ít xong cơ là muốn nó mua hồ ít xong pi là muốn nó mua hồ để nó cho chát cho giả mua mi tu mi nhỏ ô pli thầu yêu chia bây đặc kỳ một đôi ít lúc xong họ mua cái nó kế hồ li để mi tu mi cần đâu ta họ mua cái nó kế hồ li để nó ít khu nhẹ gì ít khu mi tu mi cái họ chỉ số nên đâu chán đâu giả để nó mong cho cái dùng đó.
The tying on the hand, the rope that we tie on a person's hand is to bless them with wealth, health, and prosperity, and it's more of a soul calling, so that if her soul were to be traveling elsewhere, it would bring back her soul, so that she could be more healthy on that way. So it's a very religious practice. It's very unique to the Hmong culture. It's one way to show that we're still Hmong, and even though we adapted and adopted so many of life skills and traditions within the mainstream, but we still continue to practice that. So it gives us a comfort level that we're still Hmong.
Ta mu sen, in du jie xi jie dou xia niao, de jie xi jie dou xia xiong yi ren ji shi wen gou bi ya shi wen gou yi ren du shi wen dou xi shi wen dou. Go be ya shi wen go ga yu dou xia niao dou xi shi wen dou ga yu dou xia xiong go be ya yu mo du ga yu duan duo xian dou xi yu mo ma ga yu duo duo jian go be ya go slow.
The attire that we wear to the Hmong New Year, it's very intricate, very handmade, especially back in the old country. Every piece of it was handmade, down to the cloth, to the embroidery, to the beading, the hat, the shirt, the top, the bottom, the dress, everything was handmade. Nowadays, the South has kind of modernized a lot more, so they're doing a little bit less handmade things. It's a little bit more trims and stuff like that. So it's definitely working its way through with like the modern American fashion and everything like that too.
My wife's necklace was traditionally made. It was passed on from. It was traditionally handcrafted. It was pretty heavy. It weighs like 100 pounds. So to have that thing on for a day, she would be like, her neck would be pretty heavy. And so it's been passed down from her grandmother to her mother and out to her. I think she wants to keep that that tradition going. Maybe my daughter will put it on once or twice a year, but we'll see how that goes.
So basically we're just washing, these are mustard greens, and we're actually just washing it so that we can kind of prepare it for the meal. So we're doing 2 different kinds, and this is like the legitimate Hmong meals. I would say we're the younger generation, so we probably do a lot more like, you know, more modern cooking. Versus if you had like an elder in the home, you would cook more like older traditional meals. But yeah, otherwise, if they're home, you'd do it at least 3 times a day.
If there's an elder in the house, then it's basically 3 times a day, yes.
Lunch, dinner, breakfast.
Yeah, these here are dried pork skin. And these are a favorite to the elders. So
The older generation.
they would take this over steak or.
They have more of a bland palate, you know, so they don't like things too salty or too flavored, I guess you could say. So they don't normally add like a lot of soy sauce or, you know, different sauces to it. So they like the plain, bland stuff.
Yeah, as you get older, you know, these foods it tastes a lot better than when you're growing up. As kids, we were not a big fan of it.
And maybe it has to do something with age too, because you know, there's certain foods that you didn't really prefer when you were younger that only elders usually eat, and now it's starting to be like something that you actually crave for or
It's
want
starting
to
to
eat.
taste better, and you're actually craving for it.
We know that we're Hmong when we eat rice. We eat rice like daily, breakfast, lunch, dinner, and sometimes even second dinner will be still rice.
And this is like your traditional
Sticky rice.
sticky rice. It either comes in like a purple or a white. Like if you were to ask my parents, they would probably go with this purple rice versus the white rice. I mean, it's not a preference in flavor or anything because it tastes the same. It's just, I don't know, I guess it's more appealing, I'm not sure.
Food is always a trigger in people's mind and their heart. That Hmong have a saying that if you taste plate of somebody else's food and you liked it, I mean, you automatically know that what kind of character that person is. So food it's not only a draw, but it's how we connect with each other.
Bên mong sau cái ô liu tê ấy khó bên sản nọ cho không cho ta liệt ta tê lò cho nên thì chỉ một chua trâu trâu giờ nó giờ nên nó nhưng ô tô để lò lại họ nói ấy khó bên mong nhẹ ô thế bên mong chia ý hai thằng ở tung đen thì chỉ muốn đau là nhưng vậy khó bên mấy cái giàu bên trên thằng giàu bên trên thằng này tao nào cái.
The story cloths are important to a culture because of it keeps our history together. Usually among family, everyone has one. at least, because it was very important in our culture society. The elderly women, they usually keep up with the family history, everything. So they, instead of drawing, they use quilting, sewing, and then just make the story out of it.
The dance group, it used to be that only dancing would be for high officials, so they would hire dance groups to perform for their events. But that has changed when we came to this country, to this new world where it opens up new opportunities for performers and little kids to perform for the general public. They're quite fortunate that the community has opened up their doors for these dancers to perform either at churches or perform at specific events. And also movie productions have invited them to participate, which is, it gives them, it broadcasts their culture out to the world. It brings my vision to life, that seeing these young folks or young children still using their traditional skills to promote their culture, and at the same time have fun with it. It keeps the culture going and keeps their language and their heritage going.
The elders are important to our community history because in our culture, because they keep our identity keep together, and they keep our culture and pass on to the kids. More likely, there are like our teachers.
The older generation tends to want to teach the younger generation, and the younger generation do look up to the older generation, and you have this like very unifying bond that kind of radiates out to the community.
要真正撒开个被蒙包要被蒙要早的撒个么都让他叫叫被真蒙都要中天这了被莫给18被些到18。
We need to preserve our culture, so our children, in the future, maybe generations, and they would know who we are. We built our leadership, and is strong, and people believe that when they come here, they're gonna get support, they're gonna get help. So that's why people keep coming. And leadership of the Hmong is very important for Hmong, and that's how any place Hmong live has to be something like that.
When the first wave of Hmong came down here, I heard a lot of stories about how the mainstream population and the Hmong population or community had a hard time adjusting to each other. But my time here, I was one of the fortunate ones that when we came in, the community has already embraced our culture, and they have welcomed us to their world. We've been through a lot. I mean, I grew up, I was born in Laos, brought to the States at a very young age. And as I grew older, I realized that even though the the country has given us so much. We have contributed so little, and we have the journey hasn't stopped here yet. I hope that my kids would continue to embrace the community and continue to advance and hopefully grow the community, either as the Hmong community or the mainstream community. We always say Hmong is just, it means human, and so we are free to open up our knowledge, and it's a journey that we travel, because we travel so much that what it means to be Hmong is free to travel and free to journey through life.
Yeah, เป็น梦要一早我能我年老我เป็นจุดเต็มเชแต่是เป็น梦要一早能我鸟都得เชตื่นจะเป็น我到路得เช到จะ年老我被省，要你那这鸟都说对了，เป็น我都说被省，被老中不对了，被都不被省，也被多没搞对了，被都没搞被省。
giờ mà sao nó rong go thọ của nhá thì lo tê mà rong go của nhau họ luôn gua thì khi củaเราจะใช้เตrằng của đi cho san trâu rồi thì khiเราตัวตัวsaoที่เข็มกันนะcủa nhà nhauยืดพังcủa nhà một cáiเตเราก็เตlà của mộtยืดพังขนาดว่าเราcủa chế năng cho xe đó của mộtตัวเราตัวkhiเราเนี่ยซื้อว่าเราไปอีhai mongส่วนส่วนตัวรองเสียชารู้นั่งยัดทาระ
Visit pioneer.org/postcards to catch up on missed episodes and to find out more about your favorite segments. This program on Pioneer Public Television is funded by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund with money from the vote of the people of Minnesota on November 4th, 2008. Additional support provided by Mark and Margaret Yakel-Julien in honor of Shalom Hill Farm, a nonprofit rural education retreat center in a beautiful prairie setting near Windham in southwestern Minnesota. ShalomHillFarm.org. The Arrowwood Resort and Conference Center, your ideal choice for Minnesota resorts, offering luxury townhomes, 18 holes of golf, Darling Reflections Spa, Big Splash Water Park, and much more. Alexandria, Minnesota. Explore hundreds of lakes, trails, and attractions for a great vacation or a place to hold an event. ExploreAlex.com. Tri-State Brain and Spine Institute, with locations in Alexandria, Edina, Crookston, and Maple Grove. Doctors dedicated to evaluating and treating all types of brain and spine problems, no matter how complex.